this executive order to release the JFK Jr., JFK, RFK, MLK assassination files. You're the best man to talk to about this. We've all been waiting for it. You more than anybody. You have the New York Times best-selling book, "The Man Who Killed Kennedy: The Case Against LBJ." How excited are you to see these files, and when do you expect to see them? I know there's like a 45-day waiting period or a length that he gave. So, what's your take on this whole thing?
First of all, let's recognize that we're talking about 5 million pages. That's why this is taking so long. So it's not that they're stalling,
Okay.
but they've got to go through all of it. Look, my theory, which I lay out in my book, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ, which, by the way, you can order at stonezone.com. If you choose to go to some multinational corporation that hates your guts, like Amazon, to buy it, that's fine. But get the paperback version because it's got 3 extra chapters. But you can get it at my website, stonezone.com, and I'll sign it for you. But my working theory, which I think I pretty well document, is there's a lot of people involved in JFK's assassination. It's not just Lyndon Johnson. That's not what I'm saying. So he clearly is a victim of a conspiracy. God, I hate that word. That includes the CIA, includes the mob, organized crime, includes Big Texas Oil, includes the banks who are upset about Kennedy's insistence on a silverback dollar. The Secret Service clearly stands down, just like they did in Butler, Pennsylvania. The FBI, interestingly enough, J. Edgar Hoover is a very shrewd operator. He's not in on the assassination, but he's in on the cover up. And what I expect from these documents is to nail only one part of that, which is the CIA's involvement. So, as you know, in I think it was 1994, I believe, or maybe 98, the Congress passes the JFK Assassination Records Act, which mandated that all of this information be declassified in 2017. Early in 2017, I brought that to the president's attention. He was not aware of it. And I said, look, this is how it works. It all gets released unless you affirmatively pull it back. And he said, well, what do you think I should do? And I said, let it all out. It's been 50 years at that point. It's time for the American people to know. And he said, no, you're right. And then he released approximately 80% of it. We learned a lot of things, by the way. Here's some of the things you learned in that data dump. There's a memo from J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI director, to Lyndon Johnson, informing him that the KGB, according to our sources, had conducted their own investigation into the Kennedy assassination, and they concluded that LBJ did it. How about that? There's also a memo in there that indicates that Jacqueline Kennedy asked the French intelligence to conduct their own investigation. Guess who they figured out did it? That's right, Lyndon Baines Johnson. We found the 1099 from the FBI to one Lee Harvey Oswald, meaning he was on the FBI payroll. But wait a minute, they said they never heard of him, or they had no connections to him. We found Lyndon Johnson's application to become a member of the Ku Klux Klan when he was in the House of Representatives. So we found out a lot of interesting things in the first data dump, but this data dump, when you take into consideration that it was Mike Pompeo of the CIA who convinced Trump not to release everything in 2017, I think that tells you everything you need to know. This puts the nail in the coffin of the CIA as to their involvement. Only 10 days ago, a new audio tape, I'm sure you heard it, in which Cliff Carter, the executive director of the Democrat National Committee under LBJ, his right-hand man, is speaking to Billy Sol Estes, a Johnson crony who later goes to jail, basically taking the rap for Johnson because Johnson, as Senate Majority Leader and Vice President, had delivered these multi-million-dollar fake agriculture contracts, and he was kicking back to Johnson. But there's a conversation now on audio tape. Alex Jones got to it before me, which is kind of sad because the guy who had it reached out to me, and somebody who worked for me said, no, I don't think Roger's interested, but it doesn't matter. It got out in public, and I love Alex Jones. He's a good friend. But you can hear the tape. I mean, Carter tells Sol Estes that Lyndon Johnson hired Malcolm Mac Wallace, who is the shooter from the sixth floor of the Texas School Book Depository building. P.S. Wallace's fingerprints are found on the window casing and on the cardboard boxes surrounding the window. Six different eyewitnesses describe a man who meets the description of Wallace standing in the window, heavy set, balding, with glasses, middle aged, wearing a tan jacket and light colored slacks. That's not Lee Harvey Oswald. He was wearing a T-shirt. He was 28 years old. So Wallace is one of multiple shooters. There are multiple shooters. As you may know, Paramount Pictures recently came out with a documentary entitled What the Parkland Doctors Saw, when President Kennedy was taken to Parkland Hospital. He was attended by 10 doctors, 9 of whom are actually still alive, and they all said they saw wounds in the president consistent with his being shot from the front and the back, meaning multiple shooters, meaning a conspiracy. But in terms of these documents, this is going to put the final nail in the coffin of the CIA in terms of their involvement. And it's about time. In the case of RFK, this is pretty clear. Bobby Kennedy's a good friend of mine. He was a friend of mine before he ran for president. He is absolutely right. The autopsy conducted by Thomas Noguchi, the very famous coroner for LA County, says that Robert Kennedy was killed by 2 point-blank shots to the left rear temple here. But Sirhan's always in front of Kennedy. He's never behind him. And the 4 shots that he got off, the 8 shots that he got off are all accounted for. None of them hit Kennedy. So we haven't been told the truth about that. I think we know who the shooter is. He is a security guard who had only recently been hired and then immediately after the assassination disappears and goes back to the Philippines where he's from. And in the case of Martin Luther King, as you know, the FBI had him under surveillance. By the way, it was Attorney General Robert Kennedy who approved those wiretaps. And he had told one of his associates, Osea Williams, that he was planning to endorse Bobby Kennedy for the 1968 presidential nomination. Almost simultaneously, Kennedy, campaigning in the California primary for president, in a student audience says that if he's elected president, he will reopen the investigation into his brother's murder. Within 2 weeks, both King and Kennedy are dead. Now, the King family filed a civil lawsuit against the Memphis police, the FBI, the Secret Service, and the federal government, and they won. That means that a federal judge in civil court ruled that the federal government was involved in Martin Luther King's assassination. Myself, I don't believe the man accused was the killer, and I'm glad they're reopening this because I think we're going to learn a lot more. Just to wrap this section up, Alex, the one thing I'm disappointed in is that the president did not include the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan. Those documents need to be declassified. It's very simple. John Hinckley is the man convicted of shooting at President Reagan. Hinckley is crouching and he is shooting from an upward trajectory the whole time. He gets off 4 bullets. They're all accounted for. Reagan was hit from behind and above. That is indisputable. Has to be another shooter. But don't worry, Vice President George Bush headed a task force and they put out a 1-paragraph statement saying they looked and there was no evidence of a conspiracy. So the guy who would have benefited the most from Ronald Reagan's death, he cleared everybody involved.
Man, amazing. Great breakdown, Roger. And again, you got the New York Times bestselling book, The Man Who Killed Kennedy. the case against LBJ. I got the link to your website there down in the description below. It's incredible that just to think those 4 incidences, it's possible that everybody held responsible for each one of those assassinations, or in Reagan's case, the attempt, is not the guy that they told us it was. And you say the nail in the coffin. This is what we all want, kind of like out here in the general population. We want these documents to give us the definitive answer, to change the history books, to say, hey, here's exactly what happened with John F. Kennedy. There's so many theories, so many movies and documentaries. Do you think we finally get the answer that changes history on this?
We get an important part of it. I mean, you have to view it as a puzzle. I mean, first of all, the JFK researcher community is very divided itself, and there are those who say, "Oh no, it was all the mob, it was all organized crime." There are others who say, "No, it was the CIA." Still others say it was Israel. It's an interesting theory. It is not in my book. It is something I'm studying, and I may update my book if I believe the information that's been sent to me is accurate. I want to check it out first. Candace Owens, I think, is starting to make a good case about this. So, yes, but what we're going to learn here is the CIA piece. We now have proof of the Johnson piece in this audio tape. I think that pretty much proves it. You have his left-hand man saying, yeah, it was Malcolm Wallace. So that cements his involvement. Sam Giancana, the head of the Chicago mob, doesn't know that there's a listening device in his prison cell. He's planning and actively involved in the assassination. It's all in his daughter's very excellent book. So we know the mob's involvement. Yeah, I think we're now finally going to know who killed Kennedy, and that is really the beginning of the deep state takeover of our government. That's the point at which I think unelected bureaucrats deep in the national security, defense, and military take over control of our country. And they've had control of it right up until Donald Trump conducted the hostile takeover of the Republican Party, showed the Bush Country Club jerk-offs the door, and the country's on an upward trajectory now because of it.
Yeah, a total annihilation there. And I think the last piece I want to say is, do you think, is there anything involved in the Jack Ruby piece of this, the guy who killed Oswald and who was involved? Obviously, too, his real name, Jacob Rothstein. So I know you say about Candace Owens with the tie into Israel there. Do we get any documents, you think, in this that reveal who put this guy up to whacking out Lee Harvey Oswald?
Conceivably. So Jack Rubenstein, Jacob Rubenstein, as I say in my book, is known to us. He is a mob associate. The Warren Commission says he has no known connections to organized crime, which is laughable because he's a button man for the mob in Chicago. He is sent to Cuba to run Carlos Marcello's, the mobster who controls the organized crime in in Louisiana and Texas. He runs his Cuban casino for a number of years. The Carousel Club, his strip joint bar in Dallas, is really owned by Marcello. He's just the front man. And you can find this on YouTube. It's well worth finding. There's a piece of videotape where Jack Ruby is being paraded down a hallway in handcuffs by 2 Texas Rangers, and reporters are shouting questions. And one of them says, Jack, how could this happen? Who would do this? And Ruby says, look at the man at the top, the man at the very top. And they say, Jack, what do you mean? What do you mean? And he says, if Adlai Stevenson were vice president, this never would have happened. And then they basically shuffle him off behind closed doors. There it is. He fingered Johnson right then and there. And by the way, he was in perfect health when he went into prison. It was only until a government doctor came and gave him an injection that, he turned up with cancer. How terrible.
Yeah, this is why, I mean, I'm so fascinated by this stuff, as so many people in the country have been for years about this stuff. It is fascinating, the conversations, the puzzle, the mystery to all this. So I'm so honored that I get a chance to speak to you. You're so well informed on it. I could spend all day talking about it.
You're listening